Professor Chomsky, hello. I'm Annabelle Martin, and I want to thank you very much for your willingness to do this with us here this afternoon. And I want to send a quick hello to your assistant, Bev, who we've exchanged many emails, and she's been wonderful throughout this whole process. So thank you.
I'll transmit it.
Please do, please do. I'd like to ask you a question. You opened your remarks very beautifully by putting two terms in contrast, precision and understanding, as if as the closer you got to the humanities, the more understanding you seem to feel was able in the production of knowledge, while the farther away from the humanities, the farther away from art, it seems that there was more precision but less understanding. We live in times where the humanities have very little value amongst our students. I'm not, I should rephrase that. Maybe not amongst our students, but at least amongst many of our administrators do not feel that that the weight of the university or the college lies within the walls of the humanities. I'd like your thoughts on that.
I also mentioned that the deepest insights and understanding into human life and human condition, human problems, that probably come from literature. And the humanities give an enormous, first of all, they are the repository of the cultural wealth that we've accumulated over many, actually millennia, and the basis for going on with that. It's true that they don't make profit tomorrow. And if the mentality of the administrators is nothing matters except making profit in the next quarter, or having the best, the highest income per use of for the institution, well, sure, then the humanities fall by the wayside. And in fact, what you do is impose a marketing system on the university. That's happening. It's very destructive. It's been happening over roughly the past generation. It's part of the general neoliberal assault on the population. It's happening here, it's happening in England, strikingly in England, in fact. There's a recent study of British education, which came out in the London Review of Books, long study, in which the author concluded plausibly that the British government, the Tory government, is trying to turn first-class universities into third-class commercial institutions. It's happening to a lesser extent here as well. The mentality of the state legislators and trustees increasingly is one of improving the bottom line. So, for example, if you can save money by employing temporary temps, temporary faculty, adjuncts, graduate students, people who are easily exploitable, who are part of the precariat, they can't ask for wages and benefits, they don't have any prospects. If you can employ them, you save money. Of course, there's a cost, but the cost is to individuals. The cost is to the students and the faculty. But in the moral calculus of contemporary economics and socioeconomics, that doesn't matter. Cost to individuals doesn't matter. What matters is cost to the institution. We see it in the universities with things like, for example, employing temps, exploitable people at the cost to students and faculty. But we see it throughout the society. We are all familiar with it. So suppose, for example, that you get a statement from your bank and you think they made an error and you want to have it fixed. You know what happens. You call the bank, you're put on a menu, you're given a menu. The menu doesn't have what you want, or doesn't have it obviously. You get a recorded message, which you listen to for half an hour. The message says, "We love you, thank you for your business. Just wait, you'll get a person pretty soon." Maybe after half an hour you get a human being, and maybe you can tell them what was wrong, maybe they can fix it. That's called efficiency by economists. In the modern system, that's called efficiency. It saves money for the bank, so it's efficient. It costs you, but you're a person, and costs to persons just don't count. They're not calculated. And the costs to persons are enormous. Every person is subjected to this. It's the same throughout the society. You can think of case after case. What's happening in the universities is a special case. That's a certain kind of, if you like, moral calculus built into some of the professions, like economics and a large part of the business world. People just don't count. What counts is the cost to institutions. Universities, if you're an administrator, the bank, if you're the CEO of the bank. Those are the things that count. All the examples that John Berger was talking about, some that I mentioned, are basically like that. So yeah, imposing, and one of the victims will of course be the humanities, our cultural wealth, the reasons for living, the reasons why for having a rich creative life, a life that contributes to yourself and to society and future generations. Sure, why should that exist if it costs the if you can't sell it on the market tomorrow? This incidentally is happening in the sciences too. It's very striking what's happening. Those of your scientists are, I'm sure, familiar with this. In the United States, the proportion of the national income, national wealth, devoted to research and development has declined by 25% in the last decade. That's mainly under the attack of the Republican right wing, which just doesn't believe in science, and the willingness of Democrats to go along. It's part of the neoliberal assault. Meanwhile, in Europe, Japan, China, India, R&D is going up. In the United States, it's going down. I mean, quite apart from the significance of trying to understand the world, that's also the basis for the future economy. So they're perfectly willing to cut out, destroy the future economy if you can make more money tomorrow. That's the same thing as not caring about destroying the environment if in fact we can make a little more money tomorrow by fracking, let's say. Well, it's a way of looking at the world. It's destructive. It'll lead us to destruction. And what you describe about the humanities and the arts is just one part of it. It's one part of a whole large system of which is part of a sociopathic society. We're becoming a sociopathic society. Actually, there's a pretty good book called The Sociopathic Society, written by a very good sociologist, Charles Derber, Boston College, which captures it pretty well, I think. The things I mentioned, that John Berger mentioned, are parts of it. It's nothing inevitable about it. I say it can easily be, not easily, it can be reversed with will and effort and energy, just as has happened in the past.
Thank you very much. Do we have one last question? Okay.